Hello, folks. Welcome to a brand new show here on the Football Games Room. This is the first in a brand new series called Ranked. So in this episode, Tom and I are going to be ranking every Premier League manager that's ever won the Premier League. So starting off then with Tom. So what we'll do is we'll go from 11th, because there's been 11. We'll go from 11th all the way up to first, and we'll come on to me. So Tom, let's start with yours.
So my 11th favourite or best Premier League manager is Kenny Dalglish.
Ooh.
Then we go to Manuel Pellegrini. Then we go to Roberto Mancini. Then we go to Antonio Conte. Then we go to Claudio Ranieri. Then we go to Jurgen Klopp. Then we go to Carlo Ancelotti. Then we go to Arsene Wenger. Then Pep Guardiola. Then Jose Mourinho. And topping off the pile is Sir Alex Ferguson.
Okay, so let's hear your thinking behind all of that first. So again, I don't think anyone can really argue with first place, but certainly looking at the bottom four first of all.
So in terms of Dalglish, I don't think he was a particularly good manager. He had a good season with Blackburn Rovers and he got them to a decent level. But he left very little legacy at the club, despite having not insignificant money, let's say, with Jack Walker. And honestly, it was a Premier League, but it could have been a hell of a lot more, and it wasn't, as far as I'm concerned. Onto Pellegrini, it got worse every season he was there. He won the league the first year without, in an absence of any decent opposition, really. You have a Liverpool team, it's Jose Enrique playing every week, and John Flanagan or whatever their name is. So again, I think
Liverpool side that should have won the league really that season.
Really have won the league.
Suarez and Sturridge.
But you look through that team, and it really wasn't a great team. It had some good players. It had one world-class player, but for the fact that City only picked that team on the final day kind of says a decent bit, I would say. And the fact that every year under Pellegrini it got worse. They came second the second year, and then they only just qualified for Champions League in his final season, says a decent bit, I would say. Then Mancini, I think he was sacked a bit unfairly, actually, from City. I think he did a nice job getting the league title to them, albeit he was a bit lucky. Shouldn't really have been sacked, but equally he wasn't a European Cup winning caliber of manager, so he doesn't get any higher on that basis. Conte, I think a lot of you know my thoughts on that man. Spineless, fights everyone, and he'll win a trophy, and then the next year he'll sabotage a club. So enough said about him. On to Ranieri, one of my favourite managers in football, I would say. I love the guy. Did an amazing miracle with Leicester, but I can't really put him higher because the ones above have all either won the European Cup or had an invincible season. So I really can't kind of put him any higher as much as I would want to. Then we go to Jurgen Klopp, who amazing coach, albeit needs a bit of money to set the wheels in motion. I think he only plays one way, but that one way is outstanding. So he gets a high position. On to King Carlo, another one of my favourites. Great manager, but only in the Prem 2 seasons. Sacked unfairly as well, but I can't really put him any higher because he never won the European Cup when he was in the Premier League, and he wasn't there long enough for me to really give him any more. Then Wenger, the Invincibles and all that, but that final 10 years was pretty miserable, to say the least. Pep, I used to not like Pep, but now he's grown on me a lot, that man, actually. He's an incredible manager, really. And he's revolutionary. He creates something in the game of football, and you can't say that about many coaches. But the same can be said about Jose Mourinho, who has won the Premier League 2 different stints, 3 times. And I'll always love that man, regardless of the fact that he's gone from being possibly the most beautiful man in London and the United Kingdom to that mad science teacher that you used to have at school who was bonkers and was about to blow the classroom up. And Sir Alex, you can't debate, really. I'm sure you will talk a lot more about him than me.
We're about to see. So again, I can't really argue with some of that logic. Some I probably will contest a little. So we'll come on to my ranking then. So in 11th place, I have gone for Manuel Pellegrini. In 10th, Antonio Conte. In 9th, Kenny Dalglish. In 8th, Roberto Mancini. In 7th, Carlo Ancelotti. 6th, Pep Guardiola. 5, Jurgen Klopp. 4th, Claudio Ranieri. 3rd, Jose Mourinho. 2nd, Arsene Wenger. And obviously first, Sir Alex Ferguson. Tom shaking his head there. So
Mourinho.
You've got my reasons. So let's start off with the bottom then, Manuel Pellegrini, who basically won the league by accident. They weren't the best team the season they won the league at all. And I think it's fair to say that they won the league because Liverpool lost the league. As you said, things got worse for him the longer he was at Man City. I don't really know what City expected when they appointed him. He didn't have that good a pedigree, and I think that showed during his time there. Quite uninspired signings on the whole. So not a lot of good things to say about him, really, and he always looked like he was about to pass away. 10th, Antonio Conte. Haven't got any time for this guy, really. Okay, yeah, he did well to win the league. Don't particularly like his tactics, but you can't argue with the fact that he won the league nonetheless. But as a manager, I think he failed miserably. Quite why, after winning the league, he sold 2 of your best players in Diego Costa and Nemanja Matic is beyond me. So again, the fact that you didn't win the league the second season is of no surprise. And I think we can both agree that that FA Cup victory was hollow, to say the least. Kenny Dalglish, I've put him in 9th and above those 2 for the reason that Blackburn winning the league, I think, was quite a big thing at the time. They'd only been promoted a couple of years before. Yes, they had a lot of money, and you could argue they were the first team that really were the big spenders in English football in that way. The signing of Alan Shearer a couple of years before, bringing in Chris Sutton, I thought was a stroke of genius. Who knew? I don't know if he necessarily did that. They had formed such a partnership. And if you look at the whole team, it's actually quite a decent team. So I think he did well to construct the team that ended up winning the league in 94-95. In 8th, Roberto Mancini. The reason why I think he's higher than the other 3 is because quite a lot of what that team became, in my opinion, was down to him. City didn't really have much of an identity. And I think if you could ever say they had any kind of ramblings of one, he gave it to them in the sense that they were playing with a style which City had never really seen before. Yes, they'd obviously had top signings and a lot of money at their disposal. And again, the fact that they'd managed to win the league in arguably the best season of the Premier League against, okay, maybe it wasn't the best United side we've ever seen, but still to take them to that stage and to have that fighting spirit to even win in the dying seconds of the last game, for me, says quite a lot. 7th, Carlo Ancelotti, for reasons like you said, really wasn't there very long at Chelsea, only a couple of seasons. So I don't think it's that fair to put him higher. Don't get me wrong, I think he's a great manager. Quite why he's gone to Everton and what he's aiming to achieve there, I'm not so sure. But again, finishing in 2 seasons, first and second, isn't really that bad an achievement, and he should be quite proud of himself. And I think did he not win the double as well? Next, then, Pep Guardiola. I'll disagree with a bit about what you said about Guardiola in the sense that I think he's a good coach. I don't know how I rate him as a manager. I think his tactics are second to none. I don't think he has the capabilities to build a squad without spending hundreds of millions of pounds. And I think that's why I don't rate him as highly. If he'd gone to the team, I don't personally think he'd have had the success that he's had during his career. Look, he's been at Barcelona where he had, possibly one of the best forward attacking options we've ever seen. Bayern Munich, well, the less said about the German league, the better. But even then, he still went to the best team in that league. And then in England, he absolutely wiped away the opposition 2 years in a row when there wasn't really any opposition. And I think Liverpool has kind of taken up that mantle. And I suppose the fact that he's now been absolutely decimated just a year after winning the league twice in a row seems to me like maybe he's just been found out a little bit. And the second he's really got proper opposition, he kind of falls by the wayside. I've put Jurgen Klopp above Pep Guardiola kind of for the same reason, really, that I've put Guardiola so low, is that Klopp has built a side over a number of years, and look, I don't like Liverpool at all, but they're bearing fruits finally. And they do have the potential to be England's top team for the next 2 or 3 years at least. Champions League victory last season, which Pep Guardiola can't lay claim to at Man City. And as I said, I don't think the league's been that strong this year, but they've still blown away all of the opposition. And I think I question some of what he does. And as you said, I think he's beginning to be found out a little bit. I think the question mark should be raised about the mentality of his side now that they've won the league. They seem to be a bit arrogant, so maybe that will halt them next season. But yeah, so him in 5th, Claudio Ranieri in 4th, not just for the romantic story, but because how on earth did somebody get a team that had just missed out on relegation the year before to not just finish in the top half, not just finish in the top 6, not just to finish in the top 4, but to win the league? Yes, again, there's the argument that the opposition was weak, but he had basically a team of rejects. I mean, Kasper Schmeichel was ousted from Man City, Robert Huth ousted from Chelsea, also at Borough, just thinking off the top of my head, Danny Simpson, Danny Drinkwater, Man United rejects, Jamie Vardy had come through non-league. So the whole story behind that Leicester City win and the fact that he'd managed to galvanise that team in such a way and that spirit they had, the fact they went on to win the league, for me, he has to be in that top 4. 3rd, Jose Mourinho, because I feel like, a bit like with Guardiola, Jose Mourinho requires on big money signings to win anything. And again, look at the clubs that he's been at, and he had a lot of money to spend. He's had top players on arrival on occasion, and then other times he's brought in a lot of big players. I think part of the reason why he's failing at Tottenham and why he failed at United was actually nothing to do with money, but because I think his tactics have become outdated. And yes, okay, he was of his time, and I can't disagree with the fact that he won the league in 2 separate stints at Chelsea. So that's why he's 3rd for me. Great manager of his time, not so much now. 2nd, Arsene Wenger. The only manager in Premier League history to go the entire season unbeaten. Liverpool have shown how difficult that is. Man City have shown how difficult that is to do. So I think you have to take your hat off to him for that. The first real challenger to Sir Alex Ferguson, taking Dalglish out of the equation. If you think that for, I think, about an 8 or 9 year period, only United and Arsenal won the league. So I think that goes to show how strong Arsene had managed to build his teams up during that time. The players that he brought in was also spectacular. And the way that he changed, completely revolutionised football, English football, with the diets and the regimes and all the rest of it. Okay, yes, the last 10 years were dreadful, I agree. But equally, I don't think you can deny the fact that for those 7-8 years that he was really at the top of his game, that only first place in both of our lists can really surpass that, which is, of course, Sir Alex Ferguson. 13 Premier League titles, built squad after squad after squad. And as I said, Pep Guardiola hasn't managed to win the league 3 times in a row. Klopp, I think, might be struggling to get his squad in the right frame of mind to be pushing at that same level again next season. Who knows? So the fact that he managed to do it year after year with, okay, on a lot of times, not on paper, the best squad in the league. So for those reasons, really, that's my list. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I wrote down a few comments of my opinion. A lot of them are agreeing. A couple are where I think you might have been a bit harsh, or possibly where I'd beg to differ. I guess I can get behind your lower few. The first again, when it comes to Pep, and it was what I used to always say, oh, Pep needs money, Pep needs this and that. I didn't realise until I looked up a few, I think it was at the start of lockdown, that Pep's Man City, oh no, not Pep's Man City, Pep's Barcelona had come 3rd in the league the season before he joined. He spent hardly anything. I think he bought Keita and one other player, Seydou Keita and one other player. I think it was PK. And he manages to win the league in the Champions League the next season. Of course, of course, at City, at Bayern, it was about the money or the teams that were there. So I don't think I'm not going to say you're completely wrong, but I think that that's a bit of why I perhaps would rate Pep slightly higher. When it comes to Mancini, I actually think you gave a very good explanation. And one actually I think was very good. I think you compare him, for instance, say maybe to Ranieri at Chelsea. where Ranieri got all the money in the world, but couldn't win the Premier League, albeit fine. It was to the Invincibles, who I don't think were the best in Premier League history, and I never will.
No, I agree with that.
But realistically, they didn't come that close. Yeah, they got a Champions League semi. Klopp, again, with money at Liverpool, completely agree. I think at Dortmund, that's a little bit harsh, but I can't. Again, I think that might be pulling at straws because this is a Premier League manager contest. Ranieri, completely agree with you. I wish I wanted to put him that high because I love the achievement. Again, amazing, but just on balance, I had to keep him slightly lower than you. And finally, Jose Mourinho. Again, I think you mentioned money, and again, it's kind of fair. I think with him, that's probably the harshest one because at Inter, he didn't really have anything. He had a squad that really wasn't a champion squad. And to win the Champions League, I think he won the treble with them, quadruple if you win the Super Cup, and then won the double the first season. For me, you can't deny that, even if the guy's now a dinosaur. And I'm the first to admit that he's now a dinosaur.
I think the thing with those kind of managers where, like with Guardiola and Mourinho, where we say, okay, at X club, they didn't spend it all. I think at those clubs, there was already actually a high caliber of player and several of them within the squad. So there wasn't necessarily the need to spend because they already had the high quality players. They didn't really build it themselves necessarily.
I think with Pep, I can agree with you on that. That Barca team had the ingredients to be really good. I do think Pep was a big reason behind that. But I think slightly with Klopp at Dortmund, it was a team that had come about 10th the season before he joined. So I'm slightly wary of saying that with them. And with Jose at Inter, it wasn't a great side. It was a better side than the Dortmund that Klopp took over. But I don't think it realistically would have been the favourite to come anywhere near winning in Europe the year that he did. So, yeah, I can definitely agree to disagree on that, though, in the sense that I can certainly get where you're coming from on that.
Let's have a quick look at the Inter Milan team, actually, from that season. I'm just curious, because I always had an idea that they're actually quite
it was a good side.
Team.
But it wasn't the sort of side.
I'm just going to roll some names off, really. Julio Cesar, Zanetti, Maicon Materazzi, Walter Samuel, Christian Kivu, Stankovic, Quaresma, Wesley Schneider, Patrick Vieira, albeit towards the end, Cambiasso, Samuel Eto'o, Milito, Balotelli when he was an absolute youngster. So, okay, it wasn't on paper a world-beating side, but they still had some pretty top-quality players in that team. And
don't get me wrong, they're good players, but I don't think any of these players in this squad, other than possibly Samuel Eto'o and possibly Javier Zanetti, maybe Schneider, could really be considered Europe's best at any stage. If you were to put together a Europe's best 11 in each position, I don't think, with the exception of those three, possibly any of them would have got into that 11 on any given year. Like that's to the extent where I would say he did not have the best on paper at that squad, personally. But you feel free to disagree with that.
No, I'm not going to say that it was, as I said, it wasn't the best squad on paper. I think there were some individual players now that certainly had top quality and certainly could have got into some top sides. Like just again, Samuel Eto'o, for example, won the treble 2 consecutive seasons.
Yeah,
and then Mourinho, funnily enough, but
Maicon, to be fair, good player.
Yeah,
but it wasn't. Again, it wasn't what I would call. It wasn't a United treble-winning team. It wasn't.
Look at that team on paper, though.
Yeah,
Look, I mean, okay, we had Schmeichel. Then Gary Neville, I don't particularly rate. I think he's only considered the Premier League's best right back because there's not much competition. Maybe Carl Walker is perhaps the only person, and now Trent's beginning to be the one that rivals that. Centre backs, okay, Jaap Stam, great. Ronnie Johnson, I don't think anyone would put him in any top team. Dennis Irwin, massively underrated in my opinion, but certainly I don't think anyone would put him in a top side of theirs. Okay, David Beckham, probably. Ryan Giggs, probably. Paul Scholes and Keane, likewise. And Andy Cole and Dwight York will probably get overlooked a lot of the time. Looking at the bench, then, you know, Raymond van der Houw, obviously not. Wes Brown, Jonathan Greening, Nicky Butt, Teddy Sheringham, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. So, you know, you don't necessarily need a great team on paper to win stuff.
I should know, mate. Ryan Bertrand and Turnbull for us. So the fact that Bertrand played the whole final says quite a bit. But I think, you know, that's something. And again, with that Barcelona team, and I'm going to look that up now because again, I think it's a really interesting team to look at. Before Pep came in, and Pep came in 2008. It was still considered that Ronaldinho was their player. Messi wasn't getting that much game time. He was very much considered sort of run-of-the-mill youth. And then the fact that Guardiola basically binned Ronaldinho, who I love. Ronaldinho is one of my favourite players ever, actually. Oh, wow. But the fact that Pep realised that he wasn't really a team player, he was a flair player at best, binned Ronaldinho very quickly, you know, gets in, you know, doesn't really bring in particularly expensive reinforcements. I want to look through that first transfer window because, again, I think it's a very interesting to look at who he brought in that first window. So to look at this Barcelona team, as I say, I want to give for context. They finished third the season before. They were way off the pace. I think they were 18 points off league winners Real Madrid before Pep came in. They Champions League semis, which was, I think, United knocked them out when Paul Scholes offered. Copa del Rey semis, again, who really cares? But then, and I'm going to go back to Pep's first window. It wasn't the remarkable transfer window I think a lot of people put in. Let's see their inbox. So they brought in Seydou Keita for 14 million euro, hardly anything. Gerard Piqué, 5 million euro from United, one of the best signings ever, I would suggest, you know, for a top side for that price. Pinto from Vigo, reserve goalie, under $1 million. Cáceres from Villarreal, okay, that was expensive and he wasn't a good player at Barcelona. He became better at Juventus, 17 million euro. Dani Alves, 30 million euro. Again, not an astronomical fee, but I think one that can be justified for a player of his ability. Haleb, 12 million euro. Decent for Barcelona, if not outstanding. And a guy called Henrique, who I have very little knowledge of.
So how much is that overall then in his first season?
So overall, if we add that up,
it's quite a lot still.
But remember that all of that's in euros, and he'd gotten rid of.
It's not that much difference though.
So in terms of net spend, so if I go through some of the players he got rid of, because he got rid of quite a few for decently big money. He got rid of Zambrotta, Dos Santos, Giovanni Dos Santos, Thuram retired, Esquero retired. Deco went to Chelsea, Ronaldinho to Milan, and Olagoya and Crozas. So his net spend was 39 million euros, which personally I don't think is about what at that time probably around 30 million pounds, something like that.
I don't know, 30, 35, something like that.
Yeah. Which in my opinion, that's not a huge window. If you look at the Premier League teams around that time, were spending probably at least that. And for Pep to create a team of the ability that he did.
Okay, but who else was there at the time, though?
So the squad, again, these were all players that he already had.
Yeah.
So of course he had Puyol, he had
Victor Valdez still there.
Who?
Victor Valdez.
Victor Valdez, of course, Eric Abidal, Xavi, Iniesta, Yaya Toure, whom of course he fell out with, Busquets. But Busquets was Pep actually brought through Busquets from the academy. Right. So again, I think he deserves a credit for Busquets.
Yeah.
Sami Eto'o, Messi, Bojan, Thierry Henry.
So okay, so really, he already had a pretty good squad at his disposal, I think, is the point.
A good squad, but one that had really badly underachieved before he came, you know. And Rijkaard was no dummy of a manager either. I do think he probably lost the players a bit that last season. I remember at the end he lost the fans in that last season. I used to watch a lot of La Liga at that time. I don't watch as much anymore. And it was a very weird time because there was good quality in that squad, but it was never really, it was never fulfilled. And I think Pep made the big decision to bin Ronaldinho in that first summer, which I think a lot of Barcelona fans rather at the time were very, very worried about. And I think Messi only became as good as he was because of Pep Guardiola.
As I said, I think as a coach, Guardiola is potentially second to none in terms of tactics. But as an overall manager, I personally have question marks surrounding that. But anyway, I think that's probably a bit too much of a debate for another day. So let us know what you think in the comments. Where would you rank those 11 managers? And if you like the video, then please like and subscribe. And we'll be back next time with another ranked video. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.